Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have my guest here today. Everyone, welcome and meet Charles. Charles, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your last name, so you can share that for us.
Oh,
And please, Charles, tell everyone a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself.
okay. Well, my last name is Raffensperger, so it's a long name, but it's spelled exactly like it sounds, sounds exactly like it's spelled. Uh, but so a little bit about me. I don't know where to start. I
You
kind
can
of I moved up to the Asheville area last year. I pretty much lived in Atlanta most of my life. But I've been coming up to the Asheville area specifically right now. I'm living in Black Mountain with my wife, Psyche. We've been married 4 years. We've been together a lot longer than that. We met actually in doing ultra runs, ultra marathon races. But I guess a little more about me. I've got four grown kids ranging in age from 27 to 42. I've got six grandchildren and another one on the way. So I've I've had a pretty full life. I retired recently from my job. I had been at the same company for 42 years, and so now I'm kind of free to do whatever I want to do. Um, but yeah, I've been doing ultras and trail races. Pretty much since about 2008. I did one ultra marathon a long, long time ago in 1989. But so that's kind of, I could give you, wherever you want to go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles, for sharing all of that. I love to give people that full spectrum background of really who you are, not just an ultra runner, but all of the things about life. So we can really get that inside picture and people can see themselves in you potentially to see what's possible. And okay, and that was kind of where my last question I was going to add to is how long have you been running ultras for? So since 2008. And what got you into ultra running? And maybe even before that, were you active before that, doing any other kind of sports or working out? Or kind of tell us a little bit about your history of working out to then come to ultra marathons.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started running in the late 80s when I was kind of in my late 20s. I never ran in high school. I never, I didn't do cross country or track or anything like that. I played some tennis in high school, and my later 20s, I was gaining some weight and I was getting out of shape, and kind of picked up running from there. And it actually, running actually started because my first wife and I there was a couple that we were friends with, and the wife had signed up to run the Peachtree Road Race. And Peachtree Road Race is huge in Atlanta. I mean, it's huge in the Southeast or all over. But so I thought, I just thought to myself, if she can run the Peachtree, I could do something. I could probably do it, And I was out of shape and just started running around my neighborhood, and just started out with the typical 5K, 10K stuff, and then worked my way up to, really kind of the typical path: 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon. Then I got up to I did the Rocket City Marathon in Huntsville, Alabama as my first marathon. And, since then over the years, I think I did 7 road marathons. But over the years, well, actually, I guess roll the clock back a little bit. After I did my first marathon, I heard about a 24-hour race in Atlanta. That was back in 1989. And the Atlanta Track Club actually had a small group within it that was ultra runners. And, to me, it was just fascinating that these people, there was a race that went on for 24 hours. And I was just like, wow, I can run a marathon. I wonder how far I could go in 24 hours. So I signed up for that race. And long story short, I ended up getting close to 50 miles. I thought I had actually gone 50 miles, but I did, 200 loops or laps around a high school track. And like, it was like 14 hours and something. But, and I didn't do another ultra after that. I did more road marathons and a lot of other 5Ks and 10Ks over the years until about 2008. And, so, I kept running. I had periods over those like 18 or 19 years where I'd stop running for a few months and then I'd pick it back up again. And so I was consistent to a point, and there were times when I'd get more serious about it and I wanted to qualify for Boston. And, I had some other goals. Like I wanted to get under a 20-minute 5K. So I did that once, and I wanted to run a mile in under 6 minutes. And so, I did some of those things, and I wasn't ever really very fast, but, I had some respectable times, like in the low 20s for 5Ks and stuff like that. But, so what kind of got me into trail running specifically, and then into ultras was back in 2008. I heard about a local trail race, a trail half marathon in Atlanta. And so I signed up to do that trail half marathon, and it was just fantastic. I mean, I had never really run on real trails before. I'd run on groomed trails, in parks and stuff like that. But, when I ran that, it was just such an experience. I just, running up and down hills on single track and across that race was called the Granite Grinder, and it had all these exposed granite surfaces that you ran on and stuff like that. And, it was great. And, so at that race, there were some people there that were members of the GUTS group in Georgia, which is the Georgia Ultra Running and Trail Running Society. And they told me about they were going to put on a marathon up in the mountains in North Georgia, Fort Mountain State Park. And I was intrigued by that, so I signed up for that. And, that was kind of the start of it. Once I ran that trail marathon in the mountains, it was just like, I couldn't get enough of it. I tripped and, bloodied my knee and, the whole bit, it's just, so that's kind of where things started, and it just kind of ballooned from there. I've just been doing ultras and, shorter races too. I still do 5Ks sometimes and stuff like that. But, just the community of ultra and trails was just fantastic, getting to meet these people. And, they're just all awesome people. And, just, when you start running some of these things and you're having to cross creeks and you're having to climb mountains and, it's just a completely different world than road running. And I just gravitated towards it big time. So that's kind of where that's kind of the genesis of everything. And I've kept since. So.
Oh, thank you for sharing all of that, Charles. I love hearing like the full development of it. And really just even there at the end, I love kind of what you shared about the insights of like the draw to it for you, the community, which I completely agree. I'm always like trying to talk people into like when they're like, I don't know if I could do a half or a marathon. I'm like, wait. Let me just talk about the ultra community and like potentially a 50K, because it is so different. And so this is great for anyone to hear, and that like a lot of the times the 5Ks, the 10Ks, the half, the marathons is what like a lot of people talk about. And they're maybe accessible. They're those road races like as a thing, but it's like, but also there's this incredible space and opportunity of fitness, of working out, of finding your thing called trails and ultras that most people I think have this idea and impression that like, oh, that's craziness. Like that's not possible for me. Like, like that they just kind of write that the ultra land off, like doing ultras. So I'm actually curious for you to that then, because you did do all the 5K, 10K, halves, marathons, like, so if the trail was a big lure for you, which I agree too. That's really like, there's so many dynamics and
Yeah,
adventure and fun to a trail that you don't get in road running. And you're in nature, so that alone. So there's so many amazing things about the trails, but an ultra distance is still an ultra distance. So I'd love to hear kind of your take and insights, like what what did you love, or made it able for you to like not put ultras as like this impossible crazy thing you could never do, and be like, this is actually a really amazing fun thing to do.
yeah. I think it's it's the challenge of it is just because you don't know. In a lot of cases, you don't know whether or not you can finish it or not. And it's got that's a lot of the allure to me. I mean, definitely the nature aspect and seeing places, and seeing places out in the wild that you wouldn't normally see, unless you're a hiker, or you do that frequently. But yeah, I think the main thing was just that incredible challenge that, and I'm sure anybody who's done ultras, or maybe not anybody, but I know what happens with me is, when I'm in the middle of a race, especially towards, the latter half of the race, I'm hating it. I mean, just, my body's in pain. I'm struggling through it. And then, once you finish, that time after you finish, it's just this incredible feeling of, I put my body through this and I made it, and I want to do it again. I want to go out and, I want to find another challenge that's equally as difficult as the one I just did. And so it's just, I don't know. It's kind of life altering, really. When you get out there, it's, I've heard people say it's kind of a metaphor for life, ultra is, anyway. And just the kind of struggles that you go through the period of the race and finishing, and the whole experience is, it's the one word I can, it's kind of one word that I could describe is just, it's it's a completely immersive experience, and the kind that you rarely get in life. You just, most of the time in life, you're doing a little bit of this and you're doing that, and you're multitasking, you're doing all these different things. But when you're doing an ultra, I mean, you're completely immersed. I mean, 100% immersed in the experience. And so it's almost like a Zen-like state that you're in. It's just you and the trail and nature and the other competitors, and
Mm.
it's you're just completely enveloped in it. So it's got all that.
Oh
I
my
don't
gosh. I love
know.
that perspective on that. Because in this day and age, we are so many, we're all just in that day-to-day grind of doing the things. And even if you take a vacation with your partner for a weekend, or you go with the kids on the summer vacation, which is never really a full vacation, all of
Yeah.
us parents know. um, but like, we do these things to quote unquote take time out and like maybe relax, but like you still got your phone with you. You still got to take care of other people, or like cater potentially to friends or things, like you like there's just still so much going on,
Yeah.
probably maybe doing some work on the front or the back end of that, like, or during it. And you're right, in this experience, it's like you're all in nature, like there's not anything else in the world to go on. You can be so present, and that's just such a rarity in this
Mhm.
day and age. That's a beautiful take on them.
Yeah, it definitely is. The rest of the world just kind of slips away, and it's just you and your experience. So
Woo! I'm like, you're getting me excited for my 100 coming this fall.
I know I want to hear more about that too.
Yes, we will. Yes. So, okay. So I kind of want to like because people, so I think most people maybe have known from the podcast, like an ultra is anything more than a marathon. You just did an incredible ultra recently. Before we just dive all into that one, can you just share with folks like what are like some of like all the distances that you have done like over the last 15 years, basically the different levels of ultras?
Sure. I've done, well, I guess all told, I've done probably about 80 ultras. And so one thing that I tell people too, I've got an impressive list of DNFs. I've got about of those 80 or so ultras, I've about 20 DNFs included in that set. So I always like to sign up for things that I'm not, that are really, really, really difficult. And so I've done it, everything from 50K, I've done a bunch of 50Ks, I've done 50 milers, I've done 100Ks. I've done, as far as 100 miles, I've completed one 100-mile race out of 6 attempts. So I've got 500-mile DNFs. But those are some really hard DNFs. So, I'm proud of, just the accomplishment of going out there and attempting them. But some of the, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe to speak to that also too, and I appreciate you sharing about the DNFs because that's like, we all like when we shoot for the stars, like you can land on the moon, and that's what you get to do when you go for those 80 and DNF at 20. What was like, I'd love to even like share like about one of those experiences that really come up for you in your DNFs. Because if someone's not from ultra to ultra, like you may like sign up for that 100-mile race and like DNF at mile 80. And it seems like, oh my God, you're like 20 miles away. But it's like, no, like sometimes it's just your body or something breaks down and you just cannot go anymore. So is there one of those DNFs that really stand out for you where that was just this kind of story or this pivotal like race?
Yeah. A few years ago, I think it was back in 2019, I attempted grindstone. And anybody that knows anything about grindstone, it's an extraordinarily, it's a very difficult, it's one of the most difficult hundreds in the country. And it's got like 23,000 feet of climbing, I think. And one of the things that makes it difficult too is it has a 6 p.m. start on Friday afternoon. So, about an hour into the race, you're in the dark. And so everybody, almost everybody in the race is going to go through 2 nighttime experiences. But so I was in pretty decent shape that year. And so I DNF'd that race at mile 80. When I was 80 miles in, I was still under cutoff by about 30 minutes, but my body, I was just completely exhausted. I just was going so slowly, at the time from the last aid station to the one I dropped at. I started doing I always do this thing where I do the math. You start thinking about what kind of pace am I going and how long is it going to take for, to get from this aid station to the next one? It's 8 miles or whatever. And so I started doing the math there, and I thought, and I knew I had a huge climb. I had at least one huge climb, maybe 2 between that aid station and the next one. I'm talking like 3,000 feet of climbing between those 2 aid stations. And I came into the aid station, and there was one weird thing that happened, that the sweeper in the race had come up behind me because I was the last person on the actual trail, right? And when the sweep came up behind me, it even though I was pretty sure I was under cutoff, and I know now I was under cutoff. When the sweeper came behind me, it did a number on me mentally, and I thought that if the sweeper caught me, that means I'm done. I'm just done. And that on top of the fact that I knew how slow I was moving, that if, it would take me so long to get to the next aid station that I would never be close to making that cutoff. And I thought, well, you know, I, they, they were, the people at the aid station there where I dropped were encouraging me to go on. And I thought, you know what, if I go on, it's just going to be really selfish of me, because the people at that next aid station, the volunteers, are going to have to stay there 2 more hours to wait for me, and I would do nothing but cut, I would miss the cutoff at that point. So, that's one case where, even though I was under cutoff, and there was one other race I had like that too, where I was under cutoff, but I knew I was moving so slow, it wouldn't be fair to the people that were volunteering at the next aid station to, to keep them out there hours more, and waiting for me to come in, and then having to figure out how to get me off the course and back, back to my car and all that stuff. So, you have to consider some of those factors too. And then 2 years ago, I attempted the same race. I attempted Grindstone again, and I only got to 22 miles, and I was over cut off at 22 miles. So I DNF'd at 22 miles of a 100-mile race. So go figure.
Ooh, okay. That makes me question, like, is there, because I know each race is always a little bit different. And maybe if it's raining out, like, you could get blisters more or have issues there depending on certain environmental factors or like circumstances outside of us. But I'm curious, is there anything that you can kind of pull out from, like, that you've learned from the DNFs to the successful races? Like, is there any themes that come out when you're like, okay, a successful race means like you've maybe done all your training, or maybe you didn't and you just kind of winged it, like, or your nutrition was on and the other ones it wasn't? Like, is there any themes that come up mentally or physically around like why you would a DNF or why you wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the main thing is that I'm terrible about winging things and not doing enough training. I'm just awful at that. There's only been one point in my life, really, in my running life, where I really trained consistent. Well, I mean, there's been times, but one year in particular, I trained consistently, and I had a coach, and so I had some accountability, by having a coach, and I did fairly well that year in the races I entered, but left on my own devices, I'm pretty lazy about actually doing what I need to do to, as far as the training that goes into doing some of the races I do. So that's probably the main thing. But you did hit on well, you mentioned another thing too, like nutrition. I did learn kind of, well, actually at that Grindstone race, that the one where I got to 80 miles. I did change my nutrition plan, because I have DNF races before when I had, stomach or GI issues, and that can easily take you out of a race if your stomach's, bad and you just can't get it. You can't get things together. That'll take you out in a heartbeat. And I've had that happen before. But so a few years ago, I did learn to switch some of my nutrition over to liquid calories instead of solid calories, and that did help. And I don't always do that, but I try to incorporate some of that now in some of the races I do, because it's just easier on my stomach, and it's an easier way to get calories and kind of try to avoid some of the GI issues. But
Yeah. Okay, great. Those are, well, and so you said, so it's, you're kind of more of a winger than like a full-on trainer. But I love for people to hear that and to share that, because I think it can go both ways. I've done both, and I would even venture to say I've had a coach twice with training. One time went really well, one time was neither here nor there. But overall, I just run and prescribe and do my own type of training, and I've winged some races and I've taken first place on some of those races. And you have winged, sounds like majority of them maybe, and you've still successfully ran 60 ultras, or somewhere around that, even though you DNF'd the 20. It's like, it just goes to show, I just like, this is so, exciting to share with people, to be like, yeah, you don't have to do things perfectly. Like, stop trying to like hit all your workouts every single week, all the sets, all the reps, all the paces. Like, just do something. Just get out there and move, and you can still win. You like winning meaning just finish the race.
Yeah. It's definitely true. I mean, sometimes I mean, it's just my personality. I mean, I'm just not a really organized person in terms of structure and, and that sort of thing. So, but well, there's a saying, I'm sure you probably heard it before, like the worst choices or the dumbest choices make the best stories. And so sometimes that's really true. I mean, you come back, you'll have, even if you didn't successfully do something, you'll have some like crazy ass stories to tell about what actually happened. And, you went off course, or you did, there's some crazy stuff happened. Uh,
Oh my gosh.
and that's,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was just, that is great. Everybody like rewind and hear that fun little saying quote again, because right, like either way, you end up with a story, and most likely you're having fun. I think a lot of the times people can sign up for races or don't even sign up because, or don't even set the goal because there's so much pressure to hit it. They
Yeah.
put so much pressure on. If I don't lose the weight in this many months or days, and it's just over, then F it. Or if I don't hit this PR or run the marathon in this time, well, then they just don't even want to do it, or they sign up and feel that pressure, versus like, I really get this sense from you and like in our kindred spirit here. And I'm very much the same. Like, I'm out there having some fun. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I do have a goal a lot of the times, like for the race, but end all be all, like I'm trying to have some fun out there. And because of that, I do feel like I perform so much better. Like I don't think I've like hardly ever watched my mile time on my watch. I just use it mainly to check my heart rate and miles.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not all like, oh my God, freaking out because I'm not hitting a mile pace. And I think it's just, there's so much pressure and stress, and that allows our increased cortisol, and and then we just DNF or quit or don't even start, versus if you just have fun. A lot of fun stories and things can happen out there.
Yeah. It's definitely true. And I've done a lot of like run, long or ultra distance runs too that aren't races, and that's where the real gold comes in, when it's not an organized race. It's just you and some friends trying to run a trail. So, like I got real involved in the Foothills Trail in South Carolina. So I've got a website that records all the finishes of everybody that runs the Foothills Trail. And and there's a Facebook group for it. And, so I got real involved in that over the years, and that's really fun, because we've had some wild experiences on the Foothills Trail. So, but
Cool.
yeah,
I'll have to check that out. We'll have to talk about that one on the.
eating it side of things for sure. Uh,
Yes. Okay. So good. Okay, gosh, I've got so many little notes here that I picked out from what you already shared. Okay, so one of the things you said too was, when you're picking your races, a lot of the times, or runs, you're picking really difficult ones, which
mhm.
I very much can see that in some of the things that I see coming through. So I'm curious, like, what has you picking the difficult one? Like, what's your mindset around picking these really difficult ones?
You know, I'm not sure what draws it. It just has to. There's something about a race or a run that just has to draw me into it. You know, and whether or not it's the place, the trail, the difficulty, I don't know what it is exactly. It's something different every time. But there's usually just something that speaks to me about a race that will have me going on ultra sign up and pulling the trigger. Like today, I saw a Facebook post yesterday about a race in Nicaragua, and it's 100. Well, there's a 25K, 100K, and 50K, and I thought, well, I have a friend who did that years ago and, raved about it. And like, you go up and down two different volcanoes, on this island in Nicaragua. And so I thought that really speaks to me. I could definitely do that. And I'm retired now. So fuck it, So I signed up for it this morning.
I, I thought I saw, I didn't click to see what it was, but now I know.
Yeah.
So fun. Okay. I love that you shared that actually, in that when I work with clients, one of the first things that I say, or like as a theme throughout the time we're working together, is like, you do you. Like, I like ultra running and it works for me and this, but like when you pick your workouts, like find something you love to do and that speaks to you and that draws you in. And so many people, I think, are afraid, like that or they think they should do this. They should run because running is good for you. They should strength train because everybody says strength train once you blah blah. Like, and really, I feel like you're most successful, and here, like, you're an example of that in your ultra running. It's like when you do you and you're picking things that speak to you, then you get excited about the day-to-day workouts that you're going to do to train for that race.
Yeah.
And so then you'll do them. And I feel like the same way too. Like when I'm excited, I like to put on my weighted vest or do the stairs. And sometimes I choose that over the like normal run because that's what I'm excited to do. And then I do the workout versus just being like, oh, I don't feel like going for a run today, so I'll just do it tomorrow. It's like, no, I feel like some stairs, so I'm going to do some stairs because that feels good and it still checks the box.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that. Like, y'all, do what speaks to you when you're thinking about, whatever choices you're making. Actually, and then there was one other thing you had said in talking about your training, and that you said you're not organized too. And even that, I think that's a wonderful thing to share and say, because again, there's a lot of like outside in the world, people being like, you need to have this training schedule and you need to hit it. And I see a lot of like runners training doing that. And I'm kind of like you. I'm like, I've got a rough guideline of what I'm going to do that week. But like this workout, if it's raining this day, I feel like going to the trails that day, if I feel like flat the next day, like I really then listen to what I need and want to do versus what I quote unquote should do, or be that really super organized, like watching my pace time all the time. So I think that's great to be like, the way your workouts or training can look is a lot of different ways. We don't have to do it like the OCD, like, the runner's coach's coach or person, like anything that's like so structured. Like, great, if that works for you, amen, do it. But it can also look all kinds of ways.
Yeah. I just like to do what motivates me, on any given day. So.
Oh my gosh. Amen. Did y'all just hear that? Like, do what motivates you. Okay, so let's get into, Charles, this recent race that you did. I'm like, we could probably talk about all the different races. We might have to do another podcast on it. But recently, you finished a 200-mile race, right?
Yep.
And 95 hours?
Yep, almost, yeah. 94 hours, 49 minutes, and 49 seconds.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So tell us all the things. And actually, first, I'd even like before the even race starts for you, like tell us a little bit about what that training looked like, how you did prepare so people can know the ways that training can look for something like this. And then I'd love to kind of hear just like tell us the story of your 200 miles.
Oh God. Yeah, training is just like up and down for me, so I do a lot of hiking. I did a lot of walking. So like a long time ago, my company had fitness contests where they gave everybody Fitbits. And so I became like obsessed with counting my steps and becoming like the leader at, month to month in the Fitbit competition. So I do an awful lot of walking, and I knew, and that may not have been great training for the race. A lot of walking and a lot of climbing too. I did an awful lot of climbing, and like as you know, I used to go out to Chimney Rock State Park and I do workouts on the stairs over there, and for some reason that's just I love doing that, and it's like about 1,000 feet from the bottom to the top of the mountain. And I would do that over and over again, just repeats up and down. And most of it's on stairs. And so I did an awful lot of that. I'm not great about day to day training, but what I try to do is incorporate a lot of races. I put a lot of races on my calendar before before a goal race or a goal event. And so I'm really good at starting things that I've signed up for. I've never actually dropped out of a race that I signed up for. So I always show up and I always do the race, regardless of what the finish it, how I finish it. So I'll incorporate a lot of difficult races in the lead up to a big one like this over the like 4 or 5 months prior to it. So like maybe every other week I'll have a difficult race, and so that's probably one of the primary things that I do to try to get myself in shape for something like this. And I mean I struggle with my weight too, so I've tried to go on kind of a low carb diet, and I've lost some pounds, and leading up to the big race here, the 200. But so I probably should have done more running, as a lead into the race. I did do a few long runs. I did a 14 miler one time, and I did a couple of 10 to 15 mile race, runs.
So those were like your longest long runs leading up to this race?
Yeah.
And how long would you?
Races that are the other races I did, because I did 25 milers and 50Ks leading up to this. But
so on average, how many miles a week would you say you were, including maybe the stairs? Do you know how many miles a week you were roughly training, including races even?
that'd be hard to put a number on. It might be 20 to 25 or 25 to, well, including races, it's probably more like 30 to 35 or so.
Mm-hmm.
If I included all the races and totaled all that up, along with the climbing hikes, and that sort of thing. So.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I was so curious of what that looks like, because I'm a more low mileage training for races too, because it's just I've only got so much time over here, so
Yeah.
I do what I can with it, but it's typically a lot lower than a lot of folks that are running the 50 to 100 mile weeks training. And yet, just to show like you can still finish a race, and even a 200 mile race, even on that type of low mileage training.
Yeah. And this 200 had, I mean, it has, you think 96 hours, which is 4 full days, is pretty generous cutoff for that. But it's, so it's not as much the running. I mean, if I wanted to finish it in 60 or 70 hours or something, then I would have done a lot more, you know, running as part of my training regimen. But, I just really wanted to see if I could finish it under the time limit. So, and it's much more in that case, it's much more of a struggle, an endurance, it's really an endurance event. And not only just like, I guess, endurance by itself, but endurance of pain.
Yes.
Pain was a huge factor in that race.
When did the pain start?
I can't say for sure, but I don't know. Probably you started having pain in your feet, and I think almost everybody experienced this. And you were probably like 30 or 40 miles in, and your feet started to really, really hurt badly because part of the course was, there were water crossings and mud that you had to slog through. So your feet would get wet every time you went on, that loop of the course. And when your feet are wet for hours and hours and hours on end, it just, I mean, there's not much you can do except try to make sure you don't get a lot of blisters.
Oh my gosh. And so tell us, was this a loop course? Was it what did the course actually look like other than that? And was there any elevation within that?
Yeah, so there were two loops. There was a 5-mile loop that you did first, and you followed that up with a 10-mile loop. So you did the 5-mile loop, and so the race start and finish in the headquarters in the aid station. There was one aid station was at a picnic, like a group shelter in a state park outside of Atlanta. So the race was called the Canebrake 200, and it's at Sweetwater Creek State Park, which is a really, really nice state park that a lot of people don't know about. It's only like 15 miles west of Atlanta. And it has some significant hills that are several hundred feet high. And so the race, it was kind of a mixture of flat. There were some flat sections that were like on dirt or gravel road. But then there was also some very, very hilly sections. So I'm not sure what the total elevation was on the whole thing, but it did have a lot of climbing. So it was, it's significant. I mean, it was not trivial climbing. And so you do the 5-mile loop and the 10-mile loop. And, so you do the 5-mile loop, come back to the group shelter, get some food, fix your feet, go out on the 10-mile loop. And the 10-mile loop was significant, even apart from the fact that it was 5 miles longer than the other loop, it was significantly more difficult too. So everybody hated going out on the 10-mile loop. And you kind of got a reprieve on the 5-mile loop. You do that and like, oh, good, I just have to do the 5-mile now, So you did,
Oh yeah.
you did the 5-mile loop a total of 14 times, and the 10-mile loop a total of 13 times to get to an even 200. So,
Oh my gosh. And did you sleep at all, lay down at all, or did you power through the whole thing? What did that look like?
So different people had different strategies for how to tackle it. And I think what most of the other people did is they would go they would go into the night until maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they would crash for 4 or 5 hours before they would go back out again. I would typically, like, each night I would go until 5 or 6 in the morning myself, come back into the group shelter, lay down. They had some cots put out there, and I would lay down on the cot for about 2 hours and try to sleep for about 2 hours, get up and get myself ready, and then go out again the next day. So I think so. Let's see. The first 3 days I did that, and one of the nights I laid down for about an hour. I slept for about an hour, like late in the, like early evening. I slept for about an hour before I went back out again for the night. So overall, I probably got about 5 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep over the 4 days. So that's definitely sleep deprivation is definitely a factor, and I I don't
Yeah.
I don't require a lot of sleep. So I typically on races that go through the night, I can handle it a little bit better than other people. But after the cumulative effect of after like several days of sleep deprivation, you're just it's tough. It was
Oh my
tough.
gosh.
A few loops were really tough. Like, you're, I don't know. So
Okay, yes, to that too. Like, I think what's going on in my mind and everybody else's is like, and what got you through that though? Because like your feet are already in pain at mile 30, 40. At some point you get sleep deprived. You're getting like 2 hours of sleep. Keep going. And
yeah,
was there any other like issues that really came up? Whether blisters or chafing or anything like that, or the GI issues? And then what allowed you to keep going?
I well, what? Whenever I would come in for a loop, I spent a lot of time working on my feet. So I had like foot powder, and I would walk outside the group shelter and sit down on a bench and put this dry foot powder on the bottom of my feet to try to bring them back to life, or at least like keep the pain down. Um, and I nutritionally, I did great. I didn't ever have any problems with that because they had regular like aid station food there, but they also had regular food, real food. So they would do like hamburgers and hot dogs, spaghetti. They would have bacon and eggs for breakfast. And I tried to just completely stick with the real food and try to fuel up, eat as much as I could whenever I'd come in from a loop. And I spent more time between loops, just trying to take care of myself than I think some of the other
Mm.
people did. Um, but I mean, to be fair, the other people were probably in better shape than I was. Uh, but yeah, so I generally ate enough to make it through. One thing I probably should have done is taken some food with me on the 10-mile loop so that, a couple hour, hour or two in, I could have some additional calories to finish out the loop with. But I don't know, it's loop courses are weird like that. Point to point, there's a lot of advantages to races that are point to point. So you're always seeing something new, and that sort of thing. But loop courses they're really difficult mentally, to keep going on the same loop. But also, I mean, I don't really mind them that much, and you would also see the other runners because there was one section of the 10-mile loop that was it was really long out and back. So every time you were on the out and back, or even when you were on other parts of the loop, you would see some of the other runners, and that was always really encouraging, just to see other people out there, because most of the parts of the course you wouldn't really, there were tourists in one area of the park that you would see all the people visit, doing a day visit, but all the other parts of the trails were pretty much you would only see the other runners. But I don't know, mentally, I'm that's one thing I think I'm good at is, you know force, because it's all these workouts I do, like climbing out of Chimney Rock. It's a mental challenge to go back and forth and do these reps, over and over again. So I think I've got the mental game of these kind of races down pat, and I can keep forcing myself to go out. But I think um, part of it too is that, you get to a point. I mean, I had like several really low points of the race where I really questioned whether or not I wanted to drop, and I really did want to drop at one point. But I just kept telling myself that, even if I want to drop, I can do at least one more loop. I can get,
Mm.
like, if I'm at 130 miles, I can at least get to 140 and say that I did 140 miles instead of 130, and I can drop then. And so you just keep telling yourself that after every loop. I can do one more. I can do one more. I can do one more. Instead of trying to think of the fact that, like, I've got 90 miles left, I can just do one more 5 mile loop, and that'll get me a little closer. And that's part of it.
Oh my gosh. So I relate a lot of this stuff, Charles, to like into weight loss or anyone could take these lessons that we learn doing ultras. And that right there, that one more loop. Well, one, I think we could all use that in Ultraland. If you're running a race and like one more mile, in any training. But I think even in life, that last, like, and even when I think about weight loss, so many people are like, I want to lose 50 pounds or some big number. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but like, let's bring it back and just like make one more healthy choice that day. Do one more workout Tuesday, do one more workout on Wednesday. Like, just do one more loop, quote unquote. And that will get you to your end goal, 200 miles for you, by just
Mm-hmm.
doing it one loop at a time. And anyone could just take that lesson and be like, all right, just one more day of eating healthy, or one more day of doing the things that you committed to doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that, you can apply that to really anything in life, any challenge, that you're trying to face.
Yeah. And just like a simple thought like that, I think a lot of the times too, we feel like, well, we need to have all the things and all the plans and for it to look this perfect way. And you just shared with us, it wasn't like you had many times you wanted to, or at least a handful of times you wanted to quit. And that is life. Like, that we're not always going to be in this beautiful, like, oh, things are going great. It's going to be 50-50 in a
Yeah,
race or in life. And the more we can like embrace that and then just say a simple thought, like, I can just do this one more day, one more
yeah.
loop. Um, the other things that I really heard there too, I just wanted to relate back also, was you took care of yourself, which it could be really easy to just skip on the eating and just go out
Mhm.
faster or not take care of your feet. But then all of a sudden they blow up on you another 10, 20 miles in. But you took that time to take care of yourself. And I think even that makes me want to like relate that back and be like, if we just take care of ourselves everything, like most days, right here, right now, in the moment, when we are quote unquote running the race of life,
Mhm.
versus like trying to do all the things and be at the finish line. It's like, no, just take care of yourself right here, right now, this day. Eat the good, healthy foods today and do that workout that's going to serve you today. And that's how you can finish like
Yeah,
whatever your goal is.
yeah, exactly. You
Yeah. Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah, that just I just is so good. And even like you pulled out the tools of like fueling yourself, of the foot powder. Like in ultras, I think we have to do this. Like, we have a toolbox full of tools, like depending on where we're at that mile marker, you got to use those. And instead of just being like willpower our way through it, it's like just slow down for a second and just do the things you need to do in the moment
Yeah.
to then be able to finish. So good. So good. So you finish 200 miles,
Uh-huh.
95 hours. How how did you feel after, and how has recovery gone?
Well, so right after I finished, I mean, I was so exhausted because it was, 6 o'clock almost 6 o'clock in the morning. And I got sort of emotional, but then we kind of had to vacate the group shelter because some other group had rented it. So it was kind of a mad rush to get all our stuff in. And, you have tons of junk I had all sorts of stuff there, supplies and everything. So we had to get all that loaded up, and it started raining. And so we went back, Psyche and I went back to the Airbnb we were staying at, and I crashed out pretty much all day Saturday. I was pretty much in bed all day, and I don't remember a lot about it. And recovery in the day, and we drove back to Black Mountain. We drove back home on Sunday, and I wasn't too bad. My feet, my feet are actually still recovering. Like from the blisters. I didn't have terrible blisters, but what did happen is that I rubbed all of the skin, or most of the skin on a couple of my toes completely rubbed off during the race. And I was pretty concerned about that, but so I had to treat it, with some antibiotic salve. And so my feet are actually still even 3 weeks later, still not quite recovered. But it took me, and I think my legs actually, it took a couple weeks actually for my legs to come back. So, I did 2 weeks after that. After I finished that, I ran another 6-hour race on a high school track, and I did 25 miles of that. And I did notice that my legs were still, even 2 weeks after I finished the 200, my legs were still sore from it. But I've tried to incorporate some Epsom salts baths and, a lot of ibuprofen and stuff like that to try to recover. But, I feel like I'm pretty close to being 100% recovered now, but it takes a while. That's, you do a number on your body after, doing something like that.
Yeah. I would imagine that one takes a little bit longer to recover from. But yeah, you still did a 6-hour, 25-mile race a couple weeks after, which is still incredible. I'm curious on we kind of did some takeaways there, but was there anything else when you think about the 200 miler, or honestly just your ultra lessons in general, of any big lessons that you feel like you've learned for life from running the 200 miler, or just ultras in general?
I think I actually put that on my Facebook post this morning when I signed up for that race in Nicaragua, and it's do things that scare you. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away from this. And there have been races that I was so scared of, I didn't want to sign up for, or I signed up for and I wanted to cancel. I wanted to back out because I was just too scared of it. And I think, when you start thinking about the fact that even if you sign up for something that or even in anything in life, if you do something that you're scared of, even if the outcome isn't 100% successful or what you want it to be, at least you tried and you learned something along the way, and you had an experience. So I think that kind of thing, that kind of that saying, do things that scare you. You're never going to get anywhere in life if you don't take a chance. It's just, what do they say?
Yeah.
There's some saying about basketball, or you don't get any points for the shots that you don't take, or whatever, something like that. And that's kind of true in general. But
Oh, that's so good. So good. Okay, I love that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I'm definitely not getting any younger. I'm 64 years old, and I just like to think that I can keep doing hard things, and even if I'm not successful, it's going to be an experience, and I'm going to learn something from it, and I'm going to meet new people, and it's so why be scared of things, and why not get out there and try, and whatever happens, happens.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I do wish everyone could just like hear that and and just take it. Like sign up for the race, sign up for the goal, like take that step out into doing the big scary things, because I always say like either you're going to get the result or you're going to learn from it, and either way now you can move forward and be like, I never want to do that again.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
no thank you. Or I really enjoyed that actually, and I just was scared, and this thing I freaking now love, like I can keep doing. But
Hmm.
either way, you have an answer, you have somewhere to go, instead of being in that land of like, well, I don't know. And when you sit there too long, the next thing you know, it is years and you're still saying I don't know, or and versus just going for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
good. I think too, the last thing that I wanted to point out, and I don't know if you have anything to say on this too, is this has been a thought of mine, especially recently as I'm doing my training. And I do feel like just similar to you in that, like, I like to do some hardcore things like that, like the stairs or stairs with weighted vest or weighted vest runs.
Hmm.
Um, Runs on the wing, like whim type of thing. Like I like to do some hard stuff. And I feel like be, doing the hard stuff, whether it's like I'm a stressful day or I need a mental health day, or it's like I'm a really excited, energized day, I still like the hard stuff, because the way that I feel after, I think psychologically, mentally, and physically, it is actually supports me and serves me in life,
Hmm.
versus the easy way, the super like easy workouts, or let me just do this really easy thing, like, and that feels good, quote unquote, in the moment, versus the hard thing that feels hard in the moment. Like it's not easy to be like do the 200-mile race or the weighted vest run for 60 minutes, but man, it serves me so much in the end. And I wish more people could tap into that and like feel that, experience that, or hear that, and try it. I
Yeah.
don't know if you have anything to say on that, because you obviously have set a theme of like doing the difficult thing, doing the scary thing, doing the like challenging thing. Like, is there anything to share like that you think you should share, like that, how that can actually support us versus us feeling like the hard, heavy thing?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Is there something intrinsic about the experience of doing hard things and the satisfaction that you get? Maybe not from actually doing it, but knowing that you did it. Um, that really applies to everything in life too. You did something really hard and difficult, and you lived to tell about it. You survived it, and it gives you more confidence to do anything else. There's some things that maybe don't cross over as much. Like I've done ultras, a lot of ultras over the years, and you might hear you might somebody might say, well, does that give you more confidence at work? Well, it did in a way, but it's a very different type of thing, and but it's given me confidence in a lot of other areas in my life that there really is a carryover. Um, and it's I'm by nature a really optimistic person, and that just doing the hard things like that, doing the ultras and the other hard workouts, it just kind of fuels my optimism, and it supports my optimistic personality, I guess you would say, because I just I don't I just I don't feel like I can be negative much of the time. I just always look to something that, is that gives me optimism. It gives me something to look forward to. So that's in a nutshell.
So good. Oh my gosh. Like even that right there is like, you can use like challenging, quote unquote, difficult things to fuel your optimism. Like everyone can take that and know that's a great way to like nutshell what I was trying to say. That if we do the difficult things, it can actually fuel our optimism versus take away from it. And
Yeah.
I think just that reframe, a shift in our thoughts and perspective is all we need sometimes. It's just a different thought about it versus, oh, like how you and I think about it. Like everyone can take that and be like, actually, hard, heavy challenges, difficult things can bring us so much optimism.
Mm.
So good. Charles, thank you so much for sharing. I think we're definitely going to have to do a part 2 at some point. But I don't want to make this too long for folks. So that was so incredible. Thank you for sharing all your stories and wisdom. And do you want to share with anyone to come find you, follow you, reach out to you in any way? Is there anything like that you want to share?
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to talk about. Uh, because it's just such ultras and trails and so forth. It's just such a rich and rewarding thing. But I know I'm really like I'm really just on Facebook. If anybody wants to look me up, you know, and if you are interested in the Foothills Trail, you can look me up there too. I'm really involved in that. But I'm not really on Instagram. I mean, I have an account, but I'm not really on it. I have a Strava account, but I never use it. So I'm not really into a lot of the social stuff. I mean, except for Facebook. So that's really about it.
Great. No, that's great. Again, it's like simple works. I'm a preacher of simple. So simple is great. And is there anything else that I didn't ask that you wanted to share before we finish out?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is like I was saying before, and like you reiterated, don't be scared to do the hard things. It's you'll get so many more rewards from it than what you put into it, regardless of what the outcome is. So that's kind of the only thing I would have to add.
Oh my gosh, so many golden nuggets. Thank you, Charles, so much.
Well, thanks, Samantha. I'm sure I'll see you around, or we'll go out to Chimney Rock sometime and do some stairs.
Yes, I know. I'm jealous I haven't done that yet. We absolutely will.